Live Fit Podcast, episode 94, number 6 in the sugar series with Dr. Janet Starr Hull, who is going to tell us all about artificial sweeteners and how she developed the aspartame habit.
When I got into a very bad habit for just 1 year, when I left campus every day, I had an hour commute, and I started grabbing a diet cola out of the vending machine on my way out the door. In less than a year, I began having very, very strange health reactions. And I started gaining weight, so I started working out more. I started losing my hair. My face broke out in cystic acne. I had retinal tearing in both of my eyes. My moods were horrible. My periods were off. I was just hitting a wall. And I'd always been very exceptionally healthy.
Then she tells us how dangerous this habit was to her health and her life.
After my resting heart rate reached 170 beats a minute one evening, I drove myself to the emergency room and admitted myself to the hospital because something was horribly wrong. And I was diagnosed with an incurable case of hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease. And I basically asked the doctor, well, what in the world would cause this? He said, we have no idea, but we can irradiate your thyroid. We can put you on heart medication, because I was skipping every 6th to 7th heartbeat. And I simply just said, look, I'm an environmental toxicologist. This is my job. I am going to refuse any of your recommendations until I find out what's made me sick, because how do we know how to fix it until we know what caused it?
Good point.
And within 6 weeks, my air quote, incurable disease was gone.
And every week, her blood chemistry continued to move closer and closer to normal.
When I told the doctor what I had done, he just sort of rolled his eyes and he said, I'm the doctor, you're not, you don't know what you're doing. I don't know anything about aspartame or NutraSweet. You can't cure Graves' disease.
But she did. And she started researching aspartame in earnest and wrote a book based on her findings. And what she found was very scary.
Research that was done on aspartame, I met with all of the original researchers, and there is no doubt whatsoever that this product was toxic. They knew it was toxic from the very beginning.
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Ah, yes. It is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I truly appreciate it. This is episode 94, part 6 in the sugar series. Today, my guest is Dr. Janet Hull. She is the author of a book called Sweet Poison, not to be confused with a book of the same name by my guest David Gillespie from episode 91. His book is about sugar, while Dr. Hull's book is about artificial sweeteners, particularly aspartame. I wanted to speak with Dr. Hull today so she could tell us more about this very confusing food and drink additive. Dr. Hull has a very diverse background and academic degrees. Her experiences have provided pieces to a lifelong puzzle of the damaging effects of artificial sweeteners. She has combined her various skills to form a unique application to natural medicine. Her work is based upon the interrelationships of all sciences, as she personally discovered what works in nature can surely work in man. Before we listen to the interview, I'd like to remind you to please rate, review, share, and subscribe this podcast. If you'd also like to show your support with a financial contribution, you can go to patreon.com/livefitpodcast or look for a link on any of the show notes pages. And I thank you in advance. It really is appreciated. I also want to share with you that I do have weight management, health improvement programs, and health coaching. Also, as promised, I have a sugar/solution. This is a sugar cleanse. Get sugar out of your body once and for all. Don't be a slave to sugar. Don't be owned by that sweet poison, as David Gillespie calls it. Take a look at the show notes page. I'll have a link. I'm offering this as an introductory offer for you, my listeners, for listening to this sugar series. It's only $2.97, so less than $3, and you can have a 10-day sugar cleanse. Get it out of your life, break the cycle, break the habit. You don't need it. Questions, comments, Glenn@livefitpodcast.com. Thank you. Let's listen to our interview with Dr. Janet Starr Hall. Hi, Janet. How are you doing today?
Hi, Glenn. I'm doing great. Thank you for calling me up.
I brought you on the show because you are the foremost expert on artificial sweeteners, and I know that you have a bit of story to tell on how you made this your pet topic, where you decided to go into more research about it. Can you tell my audience a little bit about your background and then why you chose to go this direction with your interest?
You bet. It was really serendipitous. My background is international geography and environmental toxicology. And I have worked in the field, both in the United States and in Eastern Europe, remediating toxic spills and toxic waste sites. And I was teaching, I've been a college professor since 1982, and I was teaching environmental science at the University of North Texas when I got into a very bad habit for just 1 year. When I left campus every day, I had an hour commute from northeast of Dallas to southwest of Dallas. And I started grabbing a diet cola out of the vending machine on my way out the door. In less than a year, I began having very, very strange health reactions. And I started gaining weight, so I started working out more. I started losing my hair. My face broke out in cystic acne. I had retinal tearing in both of my eyes. My moods were horrible. My periods were off. I was just hitting a wall. And I'd always been very exceptionally healthy. So after my resting heart rate reached 170 beats a minute one evening, I drove myself to the emergency room and admitted myself to the hospital because something was horribly wrong. And I was diagnosed with an incurable case of hyperthyroidism, or Graves' disease. And this was very unusual for me. And I basically asked the doctor, well, what in the world would cause this? He said, we have no idea, but we can irradiate your thyroid. We can put you on heart medication, because I was skipping every 6th to 7th heartbeat. And I simply just said, look, I'm an environmental toxicologist. This is my job. I am going to refuse any of your recommendations until I find out what's made me sick, because how do we know how to fix it until we know what caused it? Well, after 3 days of being in the hospital and getting stabilized, he sent me home. And I began looking for what in the world caused this. And I found it. The only thing I had done differently over those last few months was grabbing that diet cola, and then I started chewing gum and eating more and more products with aspartame in it. At that time, it had the exclusive patent of NutraSweet Equal. I removed that from my diet. I detoxed. I got back on a very healthy lifestyle. And again, that was the only thing that I had done differently. And within 6 weeks, my air quote incurable disease was gone.
Holy cow.
And of course, yeah, 6 weeks. And when I went back to my doctor, I would have to go every week for a blood test. Because he told me, I was critical. I was going to die if I didn't do something medically to fix this. I kept going back each week and being aspartame free and detoxing and getting back on a good vitamin and supplement replenishment program. Every single week, my thyroid levels and my blood levels and my heart and blood pressure and cholesterol and the whole thing were going back to normal. So when I told the doctor what I had done, he just sort of rolled his eyes and he said, I'm the doctor, you're not, you don't know what you're doing, I don't know anything about aspartame or NutraSweet, you can't cure Graves' disease. And that was in 1991. So I wrote my book, Sweet Poison, as a professor. I then began to research the history of aspartame, which is why my expertise with the diet sweetener industry is so unusual. Not only did I have an experience with it where I came out successful, but I met the original researchers. This was back before the computer where you could just Google something. So I have all the original research that was done on aspartame. I met with all of the original researchers, and there is no doubt whatsoever that this product was toxic. They knew it was toxic from the very beginning. It was approved initially in the early 70s, but they immediately rescinded that FDA approval once the research scientists went to Congress and showed them the research that it caused brain tumors, infertility, problems with the heart, problems with the thyroid. There's 92 proven health reactions to aspartame, including death. There have been 4 recorded deaths. I'm sure many more, but they stopped logging the deaths after 1992. So the history of aspartame is one of the original pharmaceutical cover-ups, government approval. It's one of the original scams, and it's still out on the market. And I'm so happy that people like you are doing your show, Glenn, because this information just is not easily accessible. It's not mainstream, and it's very hard to get this information out to the public.
Okay, Janet, wow. I have so many things I want to say. I didn't want to interrupt you because you were definitely on a roll and I wanted you to continue saying what you were saying, but so bear with me while I review my notes. One thing I want to say is that I interviewed a gentleman named Cliff Ravenscraft, and he's also a podcaster. And he, about 2 years ago, he changed his lifestyle. So he really made a genuine change to his habits, his eating, drinking, and exercising habits, and he lost all of his excess body weight, and he's kept it off ever since. Shortly before he made that big metamorphosis, he cut out his daily habit of Diet Coke, and he said he was drinking, I can't remember how many, but several cans of Diet Coke every day for the last 30 years. So when you say what you experienced after just 1 year, I'm wondering how some people like him can get away with it for so long. And he was overweight and he did have some health issues, but at the time he was assuming they were due to overwork and stress, but perhaps the aspartame had something to do with it.
I think you've hit on something very common, Glenn. And what I have observed from working with people, helping them ever since I cured myself, is that the healthier you are, and now this is just a generalization, of course, but the healthier you are, the quicker your body is going to reject with adverse reactions to aspartame and to, well, really any very potent food toxin. And aspartame is an extremely potent toxin. If people are not very active, a little more sedentary, overweight, as you had mentioned, if they're already on medications, their bodies may not have as poignant and as quick of a reaction because their bodies are already under stress and they're already reacting to other pharmaceutical chemicals, maybe even OTC headache medications, because headaches are the most common reaction to the diet sweeteners. You're going to get that piercing migraine headache right at your forehead. So before people are able to connect the dots, they have already had some health issues that haven't been identified as from that diet cola or from that sugar-free chewing gum, that yogurt, all of the products that it's found in. And they haven't connected the dots quick enough. By the time people contact me for some nutritional help with this, they have already been through all of the CAT scans, all of the MRIs, they're on blood pressure medication, migraine medication, even infertility issues, and by that time they have such a complex knot of so many variables that are involved in it, that when you tell them, look, this is serious, but yet it can be very simple. Just avoid all diet sweeteners. And once they do that, their immediate health symptoms begin to go away, and then they slowly go backwards over time. They can decrease or get off the blood pressure medications. The migraines have stopped. The ringing in the ear have stopped. They're starting to lose weight. They sleep better. Their energy comes back, and they start just going backwards in time, unraveling these knots and all of those health symptoms that they've been medicated for, including doctors telling them that they're under stress. That's a catch-all that so many people hear. You're just under stress. All of that goes away. And if they'll persevere and avoid these sweeteners, because they have to read labels on everything, because now they're not labeling products as sugar-free, but they still have not only one diet sweetener in it, but 2 or 3. They'll have aspartame and sucralose and asulfame K. So they're getting inundated with these undisclosed, unlabeled diet sweeteners. Once they remove them, Glenn, they begin to get their life back. Their hair starts to grow back. Their skin improves. No more headaches. Mood swings get better. It's absolutely amazing how simple this can actually be.
I see that it's simple to improve your health by getting away from these things, but when people develop these habits and these tastes, it's, well, if I can't drink my diet drink, then what do I drink? Sugar drink? You're telling us that's poisonous too. In fact, one thing I found a little bit humorous is, and I want to clarify this for my listeners, is a couple episodes ago, I interviewed a man named David Gillespie, who has a book titled Sweet Poison. Now, yours was first, so he came along after you, but his book is all about sugar, and more specifically, the damage that fructose does to your body, starting at the liver and then reaching out to the rest of your body and the cardiovascular system. So I find it very interesting that both of these substances, aspartame and sugar, can both be referred to as sweet tasting, but poisonous, toxic, and deadly to the body.
Well, and I think we need to take it back one step further. Is it sugar, or is it the refined sugar, the manufactured form of sugar? And is it because it's in everything? So people are getting inundated with a very toxic form of sugar, a refined form of sugar, and it's being added to just about every processed food, gum, even some medications. And so it's being marketed to us, it's being sold to us, and that is what is not necessary. I live in the tropics, and there are acres upon acres of sugarcane fields right around. I live on a wildlife preserve, so right around my preserve. And it's very interesting in my line of business to be living across the street from sugarcane fields. Yes. But what's interesting, it's rather karmic, I guess. What's interesting about that is I'm looking at the natural sugarcane, the complex carbohydrate, the unprocessed cane sugar. And when you use the organic forms of unprocessed sugar, be that sucanat, turbinado is a little bit more processed, but it's number 2 on the list, I guess, of a healthy choice. But let's take stevia. That's a good example. The stevia plant is going to be like this sugarcane plant. It's natural. It's got fiber. It's got other elements to it other than just the sucrose. And so when that's ingested, or if that's used in baking or in foods or in hot teas, for example, it's going to be processed by the body very, very differently than when that sugar cane is harvested and taken to the processing plant, and then it's bleached and it's ground and re-bleached and reground, and the chemicals are added to it so it won't coagulate. When it's in its natural form, it's not used as much. You don't use the same quantities. It's a whole different way of looking at consuming sugars. When it's processed and it's put in a box of kids' cereal or in gums and in just everything that's processed, that's where I believe the problem should focus. The consumption of processed sugar is way out of balance. And so I believe that if people would stop and realize that sugar itself, sucrose, is not a demon. It's needed by the body in small quantities in complex forms for energy for the brain. It's when it's the processed form that is dumped into packaged, boxed, man-made foods. That, to me, is the biggest problem. So people don't need to go to the artificial sweeteners as the solution because they've got to get their energy fix with a energy drink or a donut or something like that. No, people need to stop and reevaluate, what am I eating every day? How much of it is fresh? How much of it is processed? How much of it is naturally processed? And how much of it is junk? That's where people need to go back and reevaluate what they're doing themselves. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it certainly does. I couldn't agree more. And I'm wondering if somebody is in a situation and they're dying for a soda, something cold and bubbly and flavored, would they be better off with a full sugar soda or an artificially flavored soda?
Well, they would be better off with one of the clear, full sugared sodas, a clear one, because that has less chemical additives. But that said, I am going to add to that there are many alternatives out there that are not processed colas, that they can get the same satisfaction. In the tropics, we have a product, a carbonated drink called Topo Chico. And Topo Chico is carbonated, water, like let's say a Perrier. And Perrier is another good example. They have a lime flavored Perrier. It's wonderful. You put that on ice, and that is just as satisfying as a sugar cola. Actually, it's more satisfying because it doesn't give you that sugar, that swing, the increase and then the crash.
Right.
So,
and it also doesn't make you more thirsty. It doesn't make you craving more artificially once you've consumed it. We have a similar product here, and you can get all different kinds of flavors, but it's very lightly flavored and there's no sugar. So yeah, that's certainly a great compromise when you want something like that. And we let the kids have all they want of that.
There's a product that's made in Canada called LaCroix.
Yeah, that's what we get.
Yeah, it comes in cans, unfortunately. The Topo Chico comes in glass bottles, but I recommend the LaCroix. Yeah, so you guys are drinking the LaCroix, and when your children want something, as a treat, they can have that on ice. You can put cherries in it. You can put fresh lemons and limes. There are so many alternatives that people can do to satisfy that cola fix. And these we need to be promoting more. So there are alternatives out there for people that work in an office and they're just twiddling their thumbs, nervous because they've been sitting at their desk too long. They want something to do with their hands and something to drink. They can, just brew natural tea. Chai tea is wonderful to make. Fresh cinnamon sticks, fresh cloves in it. You can have 3 or 4 glasses of that without any adverse reactions.
Yeah.
So the alternatives are out there, and if we could promote them and promote those sales, that would take the spotlight off of these cola companies and put it on these companies that are actually trying to sell a quality product.
Well, next thing you know, Coke and Pepsi are going to be coming out with these lightly flavored carbonated waters too. But I imagine they'll figure out a way to put sugar in there somehow.
You know, what's very interesting, Glenn, is in Central and South America, the Coca-Cola company sells a cola sweetened with stevia. And that tells me that if they are already making that and marketing that in other countries, why aren't they doing it in the United States?
That was my question.
Uh-huh.
Why not?
Why not? Why not? They're pulling us around, you know, they're just making as much money off of us as they can until it spins out.
So while we're talking about stevia, can you tell us some of the other non-nutritive sweeteners that you're familiar with, and if you give them a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Interestingly, my research on saccharin goes back to when the Coca-Cola company first contracted Monsanto's first product, which was saccharin. And in 1902, they put saccharin in the original Coca-Cola formula. And what I read on the internet with the history of saccharin doesn't make sense to me, because my research has taken me back to China. And now I went back as far as World War II, which was the 1940s, and saccharin came out prior to World War II. But in the 1940s, saccharin was made in China from a root. And that was then shipped to India and into Europe during the war. And that's how they made the little saccharin pellets that everybody put, you know, the little pellets in their coffee or their tea, because they didn't have the colas back then. And so my research took me back to saccharin coming from a root of a plant in China. But saccharin, so I compare saccharin as being similar to stevia, which stevia is a plant from Paraguay in South America, and it's sweet. And so to me, saccharin is safe. And my research also uncovered that the Monsanto Chemical Company owned the patent on saccharin when they bought the patent on aspartame, NutraSweet. So when they bought the patent for NutraSweet, they owned both saccharin and aspartame. The research, and of course I've got all of the documents to show this, it's all proven. The documents show that saccharin never caused cancer in their research studies. They had mixed the saccharin with cyclamate, and the cyclamate had caused one of their laboratory rats to come up with a mammary gland tumor. So they slapped the cancer warning on the pink packet of saccharin. But at that time, they had agreed that they would not launch the cancer warning until NutraSweet was approved by the FDA. And then when NutraSweet was approved, they would have the cancer warning removed from saccharin in the year 2000. So what's interesting is all this was pre-planned. So one, saccharin never caused the cancer in that laboratory rat. Two, they held back the cancer warning until NutraSweet was finally approved in the early 80s. And three, they removed the cancer warning from the saccharin packets in 2001. So saccharin is still safe to me. Now, it is manufactured with a lot of modern day junk, manufacturing junk. It's got anti-caking agents in it, but for the most part, it does not have any toxic additives to it that are exceptional.
So saccharin is safe. Aspartame is not safe. What about stevia?
Aspartame will eat a hole in your brain, so you don't want to mess with that.
No.
What was the other one you asked me about?
Stevia?
Stevia is fine. Stevia, again, is as natural as you're going to get. It's a sweet plant. It's the leaf, and it can be dried and added to teas in its leaf form, just like a tea leaf, or it can be ground and powdered, so it can be put into packets in a powdered form. The thing that you want to look for, and I have a company I can recommend for you if you'd like for me to, but you want to look for a company that processes it as naturally as possible. The only thing they're going to add to it is some maltodextrin. You're not going to be able to get away from maltodextrin because that is an anti-caking agent and that has to be used. So it's stevia with maltodextrin. That's it. Stay away from companies that add, Trivia, for example, is a little bit stevia and a whole lot of other stuff.
Oh, really?
I would say it's probably about 20% stevia and 80% flavor enhancers and preservatives. So I would look for as pure stevia product as you can get, and stevia is wonderful, just like saccharin, because they are more natural, or saccharin used to be anyway. You only want to add a pinch.
Right.
So when people add, they're used to adding 2 or 3 packets of sweeteners, whether it's refined sugar or whether it's a diet sugar in powder form. They'll add 2 or 3 packets of that. You only want to add a quarter of 1 packet of stevia.
Right.
It's that strong.
Right. So why do you think aspartame has been hanging on so long in these sweeteners? The diet sodas, if stevia is around, and I've tasted soda before that is sweetened with stevia, and it tastes great. It tastes as good as the sugar kind, but it doesn't feel so heavy, and it doesn't, feel like sugar. It has that mouthfeel and the pleasure, but it doesn't have the bad side of it. So why aren't more sodas being sweetened with stevia?
Politics. It's the corporations that are in bed with the government, and it's all politics. They're making billions upon billions of dollars off of the diet sweetener industry. And from that, they jump off onto making billions and billions of dollars off the medications to...
Right. That's the other side of it.
Yes, to address the health reactions to the diet sweeteners. Prior to aspartame coming out, and we all knew, we being the research scientists and the researchers such as myself, we all knew that aspartame would do 2 primary things: create migraine epidemic and headache epidemic, and create an obesity epidemic. And both of those are here. What do you see now? All kinds of, the obesity industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, but with migraine headaches, with ED and erectile dysfunction, with infertility, we could go on down the line of the health symptoms, even MS and Parkinson's. Many people are diagnosed with MS that do not have MS. It's a reaction to aspartame.
So you mentioned that aspartame was one of the great cover-ups. Can you explain that? What was covered up? Why is going to be for money, but can you explain why they didn't go a different route and why the issue of aspartame was pushed when there's something that is not harmful, such as saccharin? And I don't know when stevia was actually discovered in Western society, but certainly that could have been introduced much sooner than it is now.
Absolutely. And I'll share with you quickly an experience that I had personally with the Stevita company in Arlington, Texas. I was there when the FDA came in and raided the Stevita company. They were importing stevia in the 1980s. And the FDA came into their warehouse, confiscated their stevia, burned. They were also selling cookbooks on how to cook with stevia. They burned the books, literally lit them on fire and burned them.
What?
Okay, now yes, and I was there. So this was when I was there, this was in the early 1990s. The FDA had been harassing this DaVita company since the late 1980s when they began bringing it in. They had contracts to start introducing it in colas and in gums and in food products, and they were really, really excited about bringing stevia in. And they shut them down in 1991. They shut them down.
The FDA
So,
shut them down because
yes.
they were doing something illegal?
No, because it was competition for NutraSweet. NutraSweet still had their exclusive patent. They lost their patent a few years after that. And then that's when sucralose came into the picture. But what we're looking at now is we're looking at the control of the market. The control of the market.
But
and they have been controlling it.
I'm confused why the FDA is handling the control of consumerism.
I would say that in one word, Donald Rumsfeld went from G.D. Searle and Monsanto into the U.S. government. And so Donald Rumsfeld was your kingpin right there. Robert Shapiro was his right-hand man.
Wow.
So they were operating both the government side of it and the FDA side of it and the corporate side of it. And that is because of the stocks that they owned in this soon-to-be multi-billion-dollar business, which it still is. So they have been making billions off of this over the last 30 years.
How is this allowed to happen in this country? Isn't there checks and balances for that sort of thing? The FDA is supposed to be a neutral government agency just to make sure humans don't get poisoned.
Very sadly, I had to learn, after doing all of this research, I had to learn that the government wasn't what I grew up believing the government was. It seems that when Reagan came into office, and I'm not blaming Reagan, but when Reagan came into office, it seems that our government had a takeover, sort of like a coup, that the multi-corporations began infiltrating the government offices, the decision makers, the lobbyists, the committees. They began to take over during the Reagan administration, because this is when NutraSweet was approved for the second time by the FDA. The very first time was in the early 1970s, 1971, 1972. That's when they approved NutraSweet for public consumption for the first time. That's when the research scientists and all the lawyers and attorneys went to Congress. They went to Washington. They said no. They met with the FDA. They met with Monsanto. They met with G.D. Searle. They met with all of the corporations and said no. Our research is showing that this is a dangerous product. It is not ready for public consumption. They rescinded that FDA approval immediately in the 70s. It took them from the early 70s to the early 80s, 10 years, to build the research centers at Duke University, to buy their research scientists and put them on corporate payrolls, and then to lobby and begin to take over and influence our watchdog government agencies. When Reagan came into office, Reagan said that he wanted to clean up government. He wanted things to go quicker and more efficiently. So they hired a new FDA director when Reagan came into office. Reagan told him, clean stuff up and start making stuff go faster and quicker and easier. He approved NutraSweet on behalf of the FDA. The FDA committees didn't approve it. Alfred Hull Hayes, one man, approved it. And we woke up the next morning and NutraSweet had been approved. And we have been trying to get that rescinded ever since. We can't do it anymore because the corporations have taken over our watchdog committees in Washington. It's political, all of it. It's political.
Even though it's killing us, and there's been research showing that this is harmful to the human body, right? You've cited actual legitimate research, right?
There is so much research. Yes, that is correct. There is so much research proving that aspartame causes leukemia, lymphoma, sterility in males, lesions in the brain, holes in the brain mass. There is so much research that proves it affects your sleep cycle, it causes weight gain. And there is, there is so much research to substantiate all of this, and it is being ignored in the United States. The majority of the research today on, I would say, even pharmaceuticals, such as the MMR or Gardasil, which opens another can of worms, but it's being done outside of the United States. As a college professor, I will tell you that the research at college universities is managed by the donors for the research and the grants that are given for the research. If you come out with a result that is adverse to the safety of the product that your donor has paid for you to research, they will tell you keep researching until you get a good result. If you get one good result, that's what they tell you to publish. It is all unscientific, unprofessional. It's fraud. It's fraud. And that's happening at university level.
And you have to know what you're looking at too when you read these research articles. Because so often I'll see a headline on, the internet or the TV news or something like that, and it says something, aspartame proves to be safe, or something really flippant like that, and they're taking it from a research article, probably from somebody else who took it, and they're just drilling it down to get the message that will get the most attention or the one that they want. And a lot of people don't understand about research when they hear something like that, and they just swallow it as if it's gospel or something, and it certainly might not be.
And it's very hard today, Glenn. It is. It's very hard to discern what's real and what isn't real, what's right and what's wrong when you do Google stuff and you do listen to various podcasts or you do your research. You really are doing your research. It's very hard to know what's propaganda and what isn't. Yeah. And I will tell you one of the worst organizations that I have had experience with is the Quack Watch and the Snopes. They will put out propaganda about topics that, sitting right in front of me, will be a research report proving that what they just said was false, was true. And people go to the Quack Watch and they go to the Snopes believing that what they say has been investigated and is good journalism. And it's hard. In the defense of people out there, it's very hard to know what is real and what isn't. They don't know whether it's safe to give their child a vaccine or not. And so they go and research it. And they're going to see both sides of the issue. On mainstream media, they're going to see that it's perfectly safe, and anyone that says it isn't is a conspiracy theorist. Same thing with the artificial sweeteners. It's been on the market for so long, people think to themselves, oh my gosh, it's been on for so long, why wouldn't the FDA take it off the market if it was safe? They do not realize that the FDA didn't approve NutraSweet. It was the FDA director who was the director for 1 year, and when he left, he went to go work for Monsanto. So it's what I call in my book the revolving door. They would go from government to corporation, from corporation to government, and they just kept going back and forth, lining each other's pockets, telling the media what to say, using only certain select research results, laboratory results. And the reason I said that it was the very first cover-up is because they got by with this when we tried to get this public and mainstream, and we couldn't succeed. When they got by with it, then they did another one and another one and another one. To now, it seems that the cover-ups with the damage caused by pharmaceuticals, it's rampant. It's epidemic.
So How come Hayes' decision couldn't have been repealed when the next guy came in?
They tried. And they found themselves just stonewalled by that man. And again, that's because Donald Rumsfeld was now in political office. And so they were just stonewalled. And we have been trying ever since. We have been trying to get the FDA to rescind aspartame, and nothing happens. Nothing happens.
Wow.
So it's gone on for so long, Glenn. The only thing we can do is what we're doing today, and that is to let people know if you're gaining weight for no reason, if you have migraine headaches, if you're having problems with your sleep cycle, you're losing your hair, and they came out with Rogaine and all of these products for hair loss, right?
Yeah.
Definitely don't use it during pregnancy. There is no doubt that the research has proven that it does adversely affect the fetus. Cleft palate, vision problems, ear problems. It does lower the IQ. That was proven. So all I can say is that people have to understand that if they are having health problems and they are drinking or eating or chewing the diet sweeteners, get off them, stop them, and see what your health symptoms are like 6 weeks later.
Yeah, that's some good advice. When you first said what people don't realize, and you started talking about the harms of aspartame, I thought you were going to say you can't trust the government.
Well, that's a whole nother podcast, right?
Yeah, it sure is, but it sure sounds like that's as big a truth as the dangers of aspartame. Did you know that LiveFit offers a variety of programs to help you live healthy, fit, and free? It's true. I offer a 10-day sugar slash solution to help you break the cycle of the sugar roller coaster. Plus, there's LiveFit Lean, which is a 28-day weight loss plan. It comes complete with everything you need to get back on track to good health. It provides a menu of every meal, recipes, snacks, a shopping list, and some really simple exercises that you can do anywhere in as little as 2 minutes a day. There's LiveFit Classic, which is my 9-week program that uses the pillars of good health to reshape your misguided efforts and lead you towards intuitive eating and exercising patterns. And finally, Live Fit for Life, which is my health coaching program that will fine-tune your progress and hold you accountable with direct feedback and solutions to guide you to the fit body you want. All these programs can be found at livefitlean.com/programs.
There is no question, and I can fill my office full of people that have stories to share, that the truth and the history of aspartame approval was incorrectly done, and that this product was put on the market with their awareness, with both corporate awareness and government awareness, that aspartame was a dangerous chemical for public consumption. There is no question that both the government agencies and the corporate agencies know that aspartame is a toxic chemical.
So the only thing we can do about it at this point is to not buy products with aspartame?
That is the best thing, because all these corporations care about are their stock shares and their profits. If they begin, well, look at how many colas have come on the market and off the market, especially these diet colas. They'll introduce one and then they'll take it off the market because sales are down. The best thing that we can do is stop purchasing these products. And once they start losing sales, then they know the jig is up. Then they know that people finally figured it out. And the thing that I think is so sad about so many products that are junk products and medications and vaccines that are on the market today is I believe the corporations are making fun of us and laughing at us because we blindly, like sheep, accept what they say and use these products and know that they're making us sick, but we just continue to use them. So I think the only way we're going to change anything that's happening today, whether it's the MMR vaccine or Gardasil or Splenda or aspartame and equal, is to stop saying yes and start saying no, because that's what will cause them to lose their money and their control. That's the only way we're going to change it. The only way.
That's crazy. I hear what you're saying about the joke's on us, and it would be funny if it was happening to somebody else, but I see the government subsidizing corn, and a lot of that corn is turned into high fructose corn syrup, which goes into foods and drinks that so many of us consume, which is making us sick, causing us to, take many different medications and die early and raise up the healthcare costs and all those things. And then the same thing with aspartame. May not be subsidized, but it was allowed. And now the same things, well, maybe not now, but the same things are happening to, we consume this thing and we're assuming that the government gave it its blessing. And here we are being killed by it.
Right. I think the internet is everyone's best hope, because anything that you question, you can get online and you can research it, and you can find yourself going down the rabbit hole. You'll find shows like yours, and then people will read Sweet Poison, and the light will go off in their head, and they will realize how they've been duped, and it wasn't their fault. It was their government watchdog agencies. It was their fault, because their job is to protect the public and to protect our children. And I believe that the issue that we're looking at today is that it's been taken over. There's a coup. It's being run now by major corporations, and they could care less about your health, because they'll make more money off of you if you're sick, or if your child is sick. And they can make money off of your child for as long as your child lives, 60, 70, 80 years. So what we're looking at here is commonsensical. It doesn't make sense. It's inhumane. But I have witnessed so many people go through so much because they have had a reaction to aspartame or to Splenda, and their doctors aren't informed, and so they don't know what's wrong with them, but they continue to get sicker and sicker. Diagnosed with MS, diagnosed with Graves' disease, for example. I didn't have Graves' disease. I had a reaction to aspartame. I had aspartame poisoning. If I'd allowed my doctor to destroy my thyroid, I would be on medication. I would have been on medication since 1991. Now I'm 100% healthy, medication free. I don't even take an aspirin. And look at the money they lost on me, but look at the freedom I gained.
Yeah.
So people have to take control back for themselves, and they have to do their homework, and they have to stand up to the fear, and they have to start getting back to the basics and living simply again. Get rid of all of these man-made, concocted products and just go back to where your grandparents and great-grandparents used to eat,
Yeah, a lot of us are really feeling that way. And thanks to people like Michael Pollan with his food rules, it's starting to shift our cultural thought into that direction. And I'm definitely along that thought process as well. I always have been. I took a cue from Jack LaLanne. He said, eat as close to nature as possible. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Now, I have a devil's advocate question here. And some people listening may think, well, why should we believe you? The government, our government is telling us that aspartame is safe. How do we know that you're not crazy and that you just want to sell a book, or maybe some other motive that we haven't come up with yet? How do we know that what you're saying is true and what all those government officials is saying is false?
That is an excellent question. And I think it's one that reaches the heart of the issue that most people have with modern day medications and vaccines. People have to return to being softer, being more kind-hearted and more open-minded and more educated. They need to be less judgmental and face the fact, why do they not want to believe that their Diet Cola is unhealthy? And that's because they don't want to give it up, because they can drink 12 of them a day and have what they think is no weight gain. What they need to do is go back to the core issue that they're having to deal with, and that is, why do they not want to believe it? Why do they not want to believe it? What are they afraid of? I think it just comes down to that people don't want to give up the convenience. They don't want to give up the free ride, because to have to do that means that they have to work harder at being healthy, and that they have to face their fears. And Glenn, I think that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Now, for our parting shot here, what non-sugar sweeteners do you approve of? You've mentioned stevia. What about sucralose?
Splenda, sucralose. Sucralose, when the NutraSweet patent, and is it okay if I kind of go around the back door on this one?
Yeah, sure. I just want to be able to give a list of other sweeteners people can use if they want to avoid sugar, but they still want that sweet flavor. I know there's other alternatives that we mentioned before, bubbly sodas, water, and things like that. But is there, maybe gum sweetened with something, or some other type of beverage sweetened with something that's other than sugar that's not harmful?
Well, I recommend that people avoid sucralose or Splenda. That was created as a competition for aspartame going off the market, and the way that I wrote my book, Splenda, is it safe or not? And in the book, I was given the formula. At the time I began researching it, I was given the formula for Splenda, so that people can actually look up all of the toxic chemicals that are in sucralose or Splenda. And what they did is they removed 3/4 of the sugar and inserted chlorine in it.
Wow.
And in order for the chlorine to stay in it, they had to use all kinds of toxic chemicals in small amounts, but still, toluene, benzene, lithium chloride, acetone. And so it's not as toxic as aspartame. Aspartame will penetrate into the brain and just wreak havoc in your brain center. Splenda is not as toxic in that respect. It does its harm in the digestive tract. The chlorine. So I just tell people that when they use Splenda and they're having health reactions to it, just go in and research or Google the health effects of drinking chlorine, and that'll match their health symptoms: skin issues, breathing problems, kidney problems, bladder problems. The mice in the research studies with sucralose, they had hind leg paralysis and infertility. So the best thing to do is to avoid the man-made chemical sugars, and that would be aspartame, asulfame K, which has been shown to cause cancer in lab studies. Sucralose, avoid the Splenda. So stick with what's natural. I just tell people that whatever they eat or drink, it has been touched as little as possible by another human being. That means that they have the purest, best products available to them. The least another person has touched it, the healthier it's going to be. And that includes pesticides being sprayed on it as well. So the best thing to do is to try to drink more water. And if they want a cola, get a cola that's a clear cola, like a ginger ale, that type of thing. Do their best to not even use extra added sweetness. Don't use it at all, just like you don't really add salt to things. They're already salted enough. Or they're naturally salty and they're naturally sweet, like a strawberry. It's naturally sweet. A banana's naturally sweet. So the least that they can add sugars or add salt or add anything to real food, the better off they're going to be. That's just a general rule of thumb. If they're using the diet sweeteners, stop. Just stop. And they may discover they're addicted to them. There is an addiction, not only a physical addiction, but an emotional addiction. They're afraid of real food. They're afraid they're going to get fat if they eat real food. And that's a marketing scam, that's been shoved down our throats since the 1990s. And our children are being raised with they're afraid of real food.
Well, tell me how, can you please tell us how aspartame in particular, but these other non-nutritive sweeteners cause weight gain? And also maybe part of that answer, but maybe not, is there an effect on insulin? If I were to drink a Diet Coke, is it going to elevate my insulin? And second part of the question is, how does it make you overweight?
Absolutely. And you've hit on something that has been researched over and over and over again. For people that would like to look it up, it's called the cephalic phase index, CEPHALIC, cephalic phase index. This is when you eat or drink or even just tip your tongue on a little piece of sugar. Your body immediately recognizes that as sucrose, something sweet is coming in. And so the body goes to work in the brain telling the system that there's incoming sucrose or sugar. So that tells the pancreas to shoot out some insulin so that it can go in there and break that down and the body can use it at the chemical level. What happens when you trick the body, you fake it out. When you put in a fake sugar, there is no sucrose there. There's no energy there. There's no nutrition there. Going back to the sugarcane fields, pure sugar, natural, complex sucrose is needed by the body. It's used for our fuel. When you fake out the body and you trigger that cephalic phase index that says incoming sugar, pump out insulin, but there's no sugar there, you're going to have insulin circulating throughout your bloodstream, and it's not being assimilated with anything. It hasn't been used up. Therefore, people that use a lot of these diet products, they have high insulin in their blood, circulating in their blood that is not being used. And so this causes prediabetes. This causes weight gain because high insulin levels will cause weight gain. And so now you're looking at why you gain weight, but it will also cause you to crave simple carbohydrates. Your body is looking for something for that insulin to be used up with. So you go on binges. You crave the simple sugars and the simple carbs because that insulin in your blood needs to get out of your blood. There's been research in France that it was an Alzheimer's study, and they found insulin in the brain. Now, insulin shouldn't be in the brain. It should be completely used up within the bloodstream after you've digested your food. So people are getting such high insulin levels in their blood, it's now penetrating into the brain, and it's causing all kinds of health conditions, and it will cause your blood sugar just to go haywire.
What's the harm with insulin in the brain? What's happening there?
Alzheimer's. It's a toxin. It's
Gotcha.
toxic in the, yeah. So you could consider it a neurotoxin.
Wow.
So the body, we beat the heck up out of our bodies, don't we? We are so hard on our bodies, but yet our bodies are such an intricate, finite spider web. It is so delicate. So we abuse it to the point to where we begin to break it down. And if you don't identify what it is that's breaking your body down, you're not going to be able to fix it. So anyone that's been using these diet sweeteners and having any kind of unusual health reactions to it, get off it. More than likely, that was the root of your issue. Or at least that's a good place to start.
It is. And what's the harm if you are having some health issues and you want to find out if that's what it is? Get off the artificial sweeteners. How long would it take to get it out of your body? 2 weeks?
Well, I'm going to say about 6 weeks because that was my experience, that I felt that within 6 weeks.
Okay.
But it will take up to a year. To be realistic, it takes up to a year to restore your total health. And that's because you have a lifestyle change. You have an emotional change. You have to understand that if you gain weight because you're not using the diet sweeteners, so be it. Deal with it. You can lose that weight later. Mm-hmm. More than likely, people lose weight because of the cephalic phase index. They're going to gain it because they're hungry all the time, and they're hungry for the bad simple carbs. Your headaches will stop. You'll start day by day, week by week, month by month. You begin realizing you're getting your life back. You don't have as many nightmares. You go to sleep without a sleep medication. You don't need the oxygen because you don't have sleep apnea anymore. Your skin clears up. Your hair starts to grow back. You're happy again. That's funny because people don't realize that these aspartame affects your emotions. You're not as angry anymore. People begin to slowly realize that, the frog in the boiling pot, they turn the heat off. The pot's no longer boiling. It's getting cooler and colder and colder.
Right.
So they slowly realize they're getting their life back. And it was all a neurotoxic diet sweetener. Go figure, right?
Yeah, no kidding. We get so used to these things. They're so commonplace. We think that it's just an acceptable part of our society, like, contrails in the sky from jets flying over. Well, Janet, it's been truly a pleasure speaking with you. This is very eye-opening. I hope all the listeners are going to think about it seriously and change their habits and not give any more of their money to these con artists. If people want to reach you, how can they get a hold of you?
My main site is janethull.com, Hull, janethull.com. And from there, they can get to Sweet Poison, my book on Splenda, my detox program, all of my work. I do phone consultations, and so they can call and contact me if they have questions, if they want to know how to get started. I've put my detox program into a video series, and I try to do the best I can to work with people as they make this lifestyle change. It will change your life. Let me tell you, you'll get your life back, and you'll get.
I was going to say that is fantastic. I'm going to have links to your website and some others of important things that we've spoken about on livefitpodcast.com. Once again, thank you for your time and your information. I appreciate it.
Glenn, keep up the good work. I do listen to your podcast. I enjoy it very much. So keep up the good work, and maybe we can do this again sometime.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Live Fit Podcast. Please subscribe and share with someone you care about. Read show notes, articles, resources, and learn more about our weight management programs at livefitpodcast.com. Once again, thanks for listening, and always remember to live fit.